Hey, Kaya, you're muted.
Hey, Kai, you're muted. Can you unmute, please?
Thank you for reminding me that I was on mute. I am looking for some.
Do you need us to play the video? You can't hear me, can you?
All right, here we go. Let's see if I can pull this up. I'm Kaya DeerInWater, the Community Garden Manager here at Citizen Potawatomi Nation. And today we're going to be going over some basic sage teachings and sage harvesting techniques and protocols. This right here is white sage, or Wabshgubiek, and it is one of our 4 foundational medicines that we in contemporary Potawatomi culture use for prayer and ceremony. But there are probably a dozen or more smudging plants used medicinally for their smoke and properties of the smoke. So even though this is the most widely used, it isn't the only one. So I hope you enjoy our video. So here we have Wabshgubiek, white sage, prairie white sage, or Artemisia ludoviciana, as it's called in botanical Latin. And this is one of our 4 most sacred foundational medicines. It is a plant that is found all over Eastern North America, from the Rockies to the Atlantic coast, up into Ontario, Canada, down into the Gulf states. And for our contemporary Potawatomi usage of white sage, it is associated with the direction of west, and it is known for its cleansing properties. It helps us. The medicine of Wabshgubiek was gifted to us by the spirits to help cleanse our minds and our bodies. And so here we're in the garden in one of our rows of sage, but it is found also out in the prairies in Oklahoma. In our homelands in the Great Lakes, it's traditionally harvested in the full moon of August, or Minka Gizis, the berry harvesting moon. And it's harvested around the same time when wild rice is ready. So one of the things that you want to know about when you're going out to harvest is always ask permission, offer your sema, your tobacco, and ask permission from the plants and from the spirits of the place that you're at. And then you don't want to harvest from a roadside or a ditch or a agricultural field. You want to kind of go out into the prairies and margins of forests to get the clean sage. The other stuff might have pollution. You especially want to stay away from places like under power lines, because the power companies come by and spray it with pesticides. So that stuff's not good for medicine. And we use it to smudge. So it's a sacred medicine for us. It's kind of similar to frankincense and myrrh that Christians use in their ceremonies. And so for us, it's a cleansing herb that we use in our ceremonies. But it's, you also want to harvest the leaves and stems that are not flowering or seeding. And let's see, none of these are flowering quite yet, but I thought I saw one earlier when I was looking at this. So just gather your, hello bug friend, gather your clippers, or you can break it off if that's what you're told. And then you never want to pull it out on the ground. You always want to clip it off so that it has more resources to the plant, has more resources to grow back. And then this is a good long portion of sage. When you're bundling, you typically only want, two hand widths, about 10 inches or so, maybe a foot. And yeah, but the rest of the branch can be used for other purposes, for teas, for other medicines. And you can also use it as a smudge, loose leaf, not instead of bundled. So nothing is actually wasted, even though only the top portion is bundled. And then you just go around and clip off the top portion of all your plants. And it's typically found in large patches or colonies. So once you find a patch or a colony, you can go and get quite a bit of it. And healthy sage is very, it grows very profusely in the right area. So it's not one of those plants that you really have to worry about over harvesting, although you should be respectful of how much you take, leaving some for other people, and only take what you need, what you're going to use or gift to other people. So like I was saying, we've used the top portion to bundle, and then so that's the top two hands right about here. You gather, 13 of those, and then that makes a bundle. But then this portion, you have just as much of the plant left for loose leaf sage, which can either be burned in ceremony, or you can use it for medicine. It's a great antiseptic, or not antiseptic, sorry, antibacterial, antimicrobial, antifungal. It's a great anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic. There's so much medicine in this. The active compound is artemisian, which is a turpentine chemical that helps with expelling all those things that I just talked about for those ailments. And yeah, I've used it a lot last year. I would put a pot of water boiling on the stove and then add in a few branches of sage, and it kind of fills your whole house with the smell of sage, kind of like a essential oil diffuser, but old school on the stove. And it's it works really well for flu and cold season because it has the opposite energies. So where a lot of flus are cooling and drying, this is a warming and moistening medicine. Okay, so we're out here on the Sharp property where the community garden is, kind of behind the powwow grounds. And we're out here looking for the southern white sage, or Artemisia ludoviciana subspecies mexicana. And some people put it all lump it all together, and other people split it out into different species. But this is the one that grows down here in Oklahoma, and you'll know it because it's got a more greenish tint to it. It's divided more. The leaves are more segmented. They look more jagged, but then the underside is always just as white. So that is something that's an easy signifier. So you can kind of bend the grass back, and you'll notice that the ragweed doesn't have the white underside, whereas the sage, the Widoktadwen, does have the white underside. And this is a pretty typical habitat for it, kind of on the margins of a forest, or kind of in between fields. You could even find it in old agricultural landscapes. And again, we want to offer our SEMA and ask permission before harvesting. And then only take as much as you need. And we are, let's see, this is about summer solstice, so middle of June here in Kaya territory, in the homelands of the Wichita. Versus in our homelands in the Great Lakes, it would be mid-August that you'd be harvesting. So probably about 8 weeks earlier down here. Okay, I also wanted to say before we leave that if you don't know your plants or your territory where you're gathering from, it's probably best to go out with someone who does know it, or a native person from that territory, because there aren't many things that you could confuse sage with, but you never know, and it's best to be safe. It's also probably best to ask someone from your territory, the native people of where you're from, if there's any specific protocols that they would like you to follow, because you are on their territory, and it's best to be respectful. So you want to, of course, make sure all the strands of sage that you're going to bundle are free of grass and weeds and bugs, all that kind of stuff. And then I measure it about 2 hand lengths. So 1, 2, that's a little short, but it's good enough for government work. So, yep. And then after you measure it, you, of course, cut it. And then I was told you use 13 strands of sage, 1 for each moon in the year. But I'm sure there are other teachings out there. Next, once you have all your strands together, you want to measure out a good long piece of string. Longer is better than shorter, because if you get halfway through the process and you're too short, then you're going to have to go back and cut another piece of string and start over. So now we have our nice long piece of string, and unfortunately this is not the right string, because this is plastic, and we can't burn plastic when we're burning sage. So this is merely for educational purposes. The stuff you want to use is the twine that's made out of cotton or some thread, or it's usually brown or green. You can find it at the hardware store or a garden center. And that burns clean when you're smudging with your sage instead of burning plastic. Next, you get your partner, assistant, to hold the top of the bundle. You can do it by yourself, but it's a lot harder. And you start at the bottom, kind of the lowest portion. You can get all a good number of the leaves together. And then you want to go tight, but not too tight, because it's going to shrink, but you don't want it to mold from being packed in too tight. And then you just go around and around. You try to line up where you're crissing and crossing so that it looks nice, presentable. And I usually go about an inch or two up every cross. You're part of the braid or bundle. Sometimes they turn out prettier than others. Everyone's unique. And then at the top, you just go around again, and any old knot that you know, square knot. Again, tight, but not too tight, because it's going to shrink when it dries. Hang kind of vertically so that when it dries, it's all drying this way. If you hang it, if you set it on a shelf or something like that, you have to, make sure to rotate it probably twice a day or something like that, so that you don't get a flat spot. And also, if it's, humid or whatever where you are, then the bottom side can turn brown where it's touching the surface because it's not getting airflow. Another important thing to say is that depending on the humidity where you are, it could take 3 to 4 days or a week to dry. You'll know when it's kind of crunchy. This is still kind of floppy because it has a lot of moisture in it. So the drying process depends on the weather and climate of where you are. But yeah, that's the basic process.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the process. If you want to share any teachings that you have about Sage, I would love to hear what other people across the nation have learned. And so, yeah, if you could put your questions in or comments in the Q&A portion of the Zoom platform, I will start answering, and we'll have a great conversation. All right, let's see. The first one is, can you give us an example of what you might say to ask permission before you harvest a sage? So asking permission, what I was taught is, you ask permission from the spirits of the place. You tell them who you are, what your purpose is for gathering sage, what you intend to use it for, and then thank not only the spirits but Mother Earth and Grandfather Sky and all the directions. There's a great example of a traditional Potawatomi prayer on the language website page. Justin Neely does a wonderful job of walking you through a prayer, just a basic, simple prayer. And you could use that for this if you like. All right. If you're in a desert environment, can you grow it indoors? You know, I wouldn't grow it indoors because it's not really a house plant, and it's not it's not made for that environment. So there is artemisias that grow all over the desert. So if you're, in the Pacific or in the Pacific, in the American Southwest, you could probably talk to someone, a native person from there, about what sage they have available if you already don't know. Or you could try to buy it. I was always told not to sell our sacred medicines, but in a pinch, if you don't have any other options, then you could buy it from Crazy Crow or online stores or powwows or something like that. Can you order, oops, sorry. So this question is, can you order seeds or live plants? And I don't have any seeds or live plants that I can ship. The shipping process for live plants is kind of complex. You need specific packaging and labeling and all that. And we currently don't have the capabilities to do that here at the community garden. But there is definitely online sources for seeds and live plants. There are nurseries that sell both seeds and live plants. One that I'm thinking of that comes to the mind is called Prairie Moon Nursery. But I'm sure if you Google it, you could find, a dozen or so different places. And then the important thing is to remember when you're searching for sage that you want to get the sage that's called Artemisia ludoviciana, and I can put the name in the chat box at the end of this, so you can see the botanical name, because I'm going to guess there are 30 to 50 different types of sage, and that's the one that we use versus someone else from somewhere else might use something different. All right. So can any subspecies of Artemisia ludoviciana, oops, sorry. I always forget to press the answer button. Can any subspecies of Artemisia ludoviciana be used for our purposes? Like I was saying before, I think there are some botanists, some taxonomists who separate the Artemisia ludoviciana complex out into many different subspecies. There are others that kind of lump it all into one, depending on how you were taught. So I guess to answer that most succinctly, I would say yes. They are more or less the same plant. There are slight differences, in leaf formation and maybe, where they grow. But other than that, I think it's safe to say that you could use it. Yes. All right. What was the word that you used before picking sage called sema? I'm not sure how you spell it. Oh, sema is tobacco, S-E-M-A. And it's our traditional tobacco, or Anishinaabe tobacco. It's not the commercial tobacco. That's a different plant and a different product. And I think they do sell it at the gift shop here at the Nation. Again, but you could get it online at Crazy Crow if you don't know where to go. There is also like loose leaf pouch tobacco that you could use if you don't have access to like ceremonial tobacco. Oh, all right. What would we use sage for? Okay, so I guess I didn't really explain that much. Sage is used as a smudge to cleanse your mind or your body, to clear your energies of negativity, to clear the room, the place of negative energies and bad spirits, as well as that, excuse me, that's the way we talk about it as Native peoples. And then from a Western scientific perspective, it does have antimicrobial properties. So the smoke, it fills the room and actually kills the microbes in the air and on the surfaces of your area. So it's antimicrobial, kind of like, I don't know, Lysol spray or something. That's a bad example, but that's the only one I can think of right now. I hope I don't offend someone by comparing our sacred medicine to Lysol. All right. This question is, how often do you smudge? My grandson likes to do it before football games. I don't know if there's really a set number. I at least wasn't told of a set number. You can use it every day. You could use it twice a day. You could use it once a month. It's kind of a personal option. Um, I would, I guess if I'm thinking about it, I would say that a good rule of thumb may be, to find a balance between, using it every single time you think about it to conserve the medicine that you have. It is a resource. It is a plant relative, and it did provide you a gift. So not to be overusing it, but it is a personal choice. All right. I love all these questions. There's great questions. This person lives in an urban area and does container gardening. Would it be appropriate for sage? And I would say that, if you're in an urban area that, and that's your only option is to grow things, wild plants in containers, then, that's what you have available. So yeah, totally. There are some folks out there that would frown upon that. But I think given the circumstances, that's the best you have. And so um, I personally don't see a problem with that, but you could always ask your elders or mentors or teachers that you have in your area or in your life, or, offer some SEMA and then wait for an answer. Miigwech. All right. Next question. Again, I really love all these questions. Thank you for being so engaging. This is a question about using prairie sage versus California white sage. And this woman says, I believe prairie sage is what our ancestors used and wanted to check. Yes, there is a difference, and it's an important difference. This is one area where I personally have kind of a firm or rigid understanding. And it's because I grew up in California and I saw the damage that over harvesting does to the California sage population. The stuff that you find in gift shops and powwows oftentimes is California white sage. It has a really wide leaf, and it has a kind of a unique kind of pungent smell. It smells a lot different than our prairie white sage or our eastern sage. And that California sage only grows in a few counties in California, and it really should be left for the California native population, because that's their sage, whereas the rest of the native peoples across North America, across Turtle Island, have access to other traditional medicines. So yeah, I would try to get the prairie sage or the eastern white sage versus the California sage. Miigwech for that question. Okay, so this next question comes up. It says, how long should you allow sage to mature before harvesting the plant? It kind of depends on the size of the plant. If you put it in the ground really early, you know, say February or March, you may be able to harvest it in the first year. You know, I would be cautious about how much you harvest in the first year, but you may be able to get some off of it for the first year. And it also, if you harvest the top portion of the plant, it's going to put out side shoots and grow more bushy. And it also, sage is kind of a colonial plant. So it puts out underground roots and forms like masses of stems. And by clipping off the top, you're kind of promoting it to make a wider, bigger colony. So you could do the first year. If your plant's not that big and doesn't look that healthy, you can wait until one full year of growth. And then on the second season, the second summer, you should easily have, you know, enough sage to harvest. Miigwech. Okay. This one says, I've heard from other tribes that medicine should only be gifted or gathered yourself. But if you're from a location where wild harvesting is not possible, is it okay to trade for medicines, whether with traditional sema or purchase it, or will you lose medicinal qualities if purchased? You know, like I said before, I was told that, yeah, you're not supposed to ever sell or buy medicines, but I think that if you're in a pinch, if you're in a bind, and you're in an urban area or somewhere way out of your territories and you don't have access to it, you know, connecting with that plant relative, using that medicine is sometimes necessary. So I wouldn't say that it's a really, really rigid, hard and fast rule, but yeah, it's probably better to gather your own or grow your own, or you know, it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum, and you use your best judgment is all I'm trying to say. Okay. Is sage a plant we, oops, sorry. Is sage a plant we cultivated traditionally? No, it was not part of our cultivation practices. And when I say cultivation practices, I mean, you know, growing in a garden sense where you're weeding and watering and hoeing and planting. We would have gone out to the prairies and just got our sage. So it is a traditional plant in that sense. You know, it's a culturally specific plant because it does come, it is part of our tradition, but we would not have cultivated it. And the reason I'm cultivating it is because I don't have access to large swaths of land, and I'm trying to provide a service and provide medicine for the community. And it's kind of the best of the situation that I was given. So that's why I put it in the garden. But traditionally, it's kind of, it's not cultivated per se. All right, so this is, do they sell it at the gift shop? I don't think they have our traditional sage at the gift shop. I think they sell California white sage at the gift shop, and they might sell another prairie sage at the gift shop. But specifically Artemisia ludoviciana, I don't think they sell, unfortunately. It's actually not all that common to find that specific sage outside of like a powwow, or you could probably find it bundled online. But yeah, I would look online, maybe even Etsy or something like that, some one of those sites where it's like artisan, you know, crafters and stuff. Like what? All right. Oh, this one is about the boiling of the sage water in your house. So I typically put like 1 or 2 handfuls of dried sage in a medium-sized pot, maybe like 6 cups of water or something like that. And you can boil it for up to 24 hours. It kind of permeates through your room, through your house, and it smells really nice. And you just have to add water, of course, because as that water is boiling off the top of your pot, you know, you want to add more, otherwise you'll end up with a burnt pot, and that's no fun. Oh, and another thing is, because of all the medicines in it, there ends up being a kind of a brown coating on a pot. So if you have like an old pot that you don't mind getting all stained, that would probably be better. Yeah. Miigwech for that question. All right. Can sage be harvested outside the full moon in August, or should you have an entire year's worth at once? I would say that, again, that, you know, if you're in the northern climate, like say Indiana, North or South Dakota, kind of up there in the northern part of the country, that August is a good time. But again, the more important thing to remember is you don't want to harvest sage that's flowering or seeding. And so down here in Kitish territory, in the homelands of the Wichita, we harvest in the mid to end June, because that's right before the sage flowers. And the reason you don't want to harvest a flowering plant is because, unless you're specifically going for the flowers, but in this case we're not. The reason you don't want to harvest it is because it's pulling all of its resources into making the next generation, into making the seeds. And so it's best to leave it to do its work. Okay. It says, if anyone's looking for seeds in the Southwest, nativeseeds.org has a program for natives who live in the area. Great. So nativeseeds.org, go there if you live in the Southwest, and you can get some seeds. Okay, this question is, you mentioned 4 plants. What are the other ones? And this is a question that we got yesterday in our presentation. So sage is, or wabskiabuk is one of the sacred medicines. Sweetgrass or weengosh is another. And then of course, sema or tobacco is the third, and gishki or white cedar is the 4th medicine. So those are the 4 kind of foundational sacred medicines. And really, if you're going to have one, it would be sema. And sema is tobacco. Our tobacco is the most important to us as Anishinaabe people. There's a great story out there. I don't have time to tell it right now, but I'll basically say tobacco is how we get permission from the spirits, how we get permission for anything. So it precedes everything. And if you want to learn more about tobacco, I believe we're having a SEMA tutorial or SEMA teachings session for virtual festival next week, and you can look to that one for some more information. Okay. Okay to smudge your animals. You know, I don't see why not, but I haven't really thought about it. So you might again ask one of your own mentors or one of your own teachers or elders, whoever you respect, about that. You know, a lot of different Native people. Each family has their own teachings. Each tribe has their own teachings. So, but I don't see a problem with it. Miigwech. Okay, what would the ceremonial purpose of sage be? I think I covered this, and I'm of course happy to cover it again. So it is used to smudge off before ceremonies, before prayer, before events. You know, even in general council tomorrow, they usually have someone walking around before everything gets started, smudging people off. So that's kind of how it's used. It's used to cleanse the area, to cleanse the room and your mind and your body of negativity so that everything can have kind of a good start. I purchased sage from the gift shop. Do you know what type or source of sage? Again, I don't know. Sorry. I feel like I should, but I honestly haven't looked over there in a while. And it could be California white sage, or it could be some other northern sage, but I'm not sure. You might call and ask them. Okay. Oh, this is a great question. I love this question. It's asking about how red willow was incorporated as part of our sema or tobacco. So so red willow, the inner bark of the red willow, or osier dogwood, red osier dogwood, Cornus sericea, is also Cornus stolonifera if you're from an older generation. It was used as our original tobacco, our original sema. You know, pipe tobacco or ceremonial tobacco is kind of a plant from Central and South America. So we wouldn't have had access to this prior to colonization, or it wouldn't be readily available for us. So most communities would have, you know, 500 years ago would have had red willow sema. And that's kind of, you know, there's some talk about that being the decolonized version of tobacco. And that has no nicotine in it, so you don't have to be worried about addiction problems. And but there's a lot of other tobaccos out there. My guess is that sema was used as a word more generally than it is today, used for one specific plant. And again, if you want to ask these questions more in the, we can go into them more during the tobacco presentation, the SEMA presentation next week. But I love that question. It's really important because, you know, most northern communities in the Great Lakes wouldn't have had access. The growing season is too short for to grow our Nicotiana rustica, our ceremonial tobacco. What counties in California? I'm in Southern California, Orange County. Yeah, I think it's somewhere around there. It might be up towards Santa Barbara, you know, and out kind of inland California, inland Southern California, out into like San Bernardino area. I know as I used to drive north on Interstate 5, kind of by the Grapevine is where I started seeing it. But that's just along the roadside. So it could really be, you know, all the way up into Monterey County, if you're familiar with the California landscapes. Miigwech. Okay, I live in Texas and have no way or grow or harvest sage, then yeah, you're going to probably need to purchase it or find someone who can harvest some for you who lives somewhere where it does grow. I know there are folks who have it available to them who would probably share some with you. I'll put my email in the bottom, and we can you can email me, and I can try to set you up with someone if you're really looking for sage and you can't find any other way to get it. Could you tell us more about the community garden? Yes. So they're on, well, actually right now I have a, one of my coworkers is up there at the garden with the volunteers because right now I'm presenting. But usually Tuesday afternoons and Friday mornings are our volunteer times. You're welcome to stop by the garden anytime. And it is a community garden, so it's open to all tribal citizens as well as all community members in the greater Shawnee kind of central Oklahoma area. So anytime you're around, it's kind of by the prayer circle above the powwow grounds. If this question is, if you're worried about ruining a pot, maybe try an old slow cooker. Yeah, I never thought of that. A ceramic slow cooker might be a better option, but it'll probably take a few hours to get it up to steaming. Okay, are there any books that teach about sage? Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. There might be. I haven't really looked on that one actually. I don't know. Google it. Miigwech. All right. Oh, you're welcome, Kevin. You're welcome. Thanks for joining. Okay, we use it for smudging. After boiling, can we drink it? Is it beneficial use? So I was told that it's really strong medicine. When you're drinking a tea, you should drink it sparingly. And it is, you know, there are teachings, there are uses for it, for the tea itself, but yeah, it is strong medicine, so use it sparingly. I would say only drink it once or twice, and use a low dosage. You know, if you're typically use a kind of a teaspoon to a tablespoon to each cup of tea, I would shy on the lower side of that and use probably a teaspoon of crushed sage per cup of tea, and don't steep it very long, because I'd hate for someone to get sick. And of course, I am not a licensed physician, so this is not medical advice. Oh, great. Someone put a link here for sage in the chat box. So I just added it from the questions down to the chat box. And let's see. All right. Does anybody have any more questions? Do I need to go over anything again? Sometimes I'm not so clear on my answers, and I can see how it would be confusing. So I'm more than happy to go over anything that I've covered. If you need a refresher or me to say something again. We have a couple more minutes left, so Miigwech Cat, good to hear from you. Good to see you. Miigwech Joan, thank you for joining. Would sage be beneficial on a wound? I don't see why not. Maybe make a poultice, try it out. I don't know if there's any literature to support that, and I haven't tried it on a wound, but it being an antimicrobial plant, I could see that working. I traditionally use yarrow for that, you know, a wound dressing, depending on the wound, or plantain leaf. But yeah, give it a shot. Let me know. Oh, thank you, Sarah. There's more. Oh no, can't put things in chat. I should open up the chat. Linda, thank you. Good to hear from you. Good to see you. I'm glad you joined today. All right, folks. I think that's it. That's about all the time we have. Here, I'll put my email in the bottom in the chat box, so you can email me with any more questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. I'm here for any plant-related questions you have. Mama P. Jayak. Oh wait, 2 more questions. Uh-oh. The name of the sage plant that we use. It's the Latin name is Artemisia ludoviciana, and I can put it in the chat box for you. Miigwech for attending, Marcia. Miigwech and Miigwech, Bama P, Carmelita.